show. We have on this awesome show interviews with Charles Shambry, Todd Lemense. Todd Lemense is going to talk about his show, his podcast, Re-Engineering You. I'm excited to have my friend, my buddy, my pal, Todd on the show. Todd, welcome.
Thank you, Charles. Good to be here.
I'm so excited to have you, my friend. We've been trying to do this for a long time, actually a couple of years now, right?
We have been a fan of yours. Charles won't say it, but he's been Father of the Year now, I think 3 years in a row. Is that right?
I appreciate that, man. You're a good father too, from what I hear, right? You had some kids, right? You had
Stepkids.
Oh, stepkids. That's right.
Yeah, it doesn't count. You don't get the same marks for that, but yeah.
Right. So me and Todd met here at the studio when I was doing TV Toastmasters, and I was so impressed with his enthusiasm and his eagerness to be on TV and just be a personality. That's what I noticed about you. Like you have this zeal, you have this A-type personality, this killer instinct type of motivational personality that I like and identify with, because I feel like I'm that type of person too. So, but that's what I noticed when I first met you. Like this guy, he's a winner.
Well, I lose some. I try not to get married to my losses or to my wins. But on the public speaking thing, as you're as a fellow public speaker, you're an accomplished public speaker. I went to the TED Talks thing in Portland. Did you go to that by any chance?
I did not.
It's something that was interesting to me. So anytime you're watching these world's best TED Talks we've all watched with 5 million views, did you know they're reading off a teleprompter? Did you know that?
I did not know that.
They are. They're not speeches, they're reading contests.
Okay.
I thought that was cool. So that made me feel a little better, that maybe these people aren't as smart as me. They just have better speech writers.
That's good. I like how you said that, because when I listen to your podcast, you have that voice that's very, it's solid. It sounds very scholarly, and has a deep presence with it. And so I like how you said that, how you described how the TED Talk works. I didn't know that. But let's talk about your show. Well, actually, before we talk about your show, let's talk about your background. So let's talk about where you're from originally, and how did you get here? And then we'll go into your show, Re-Engineering You.
Well, I grew up in rural Maine in a fishing village of only 1,000 people. And then I moved my adult life. I spent 10 years of my adult life in Seattle and 10 years of my adult life in Portland. And I've been a lifelong salesperson. So I've been in the people business for many, many years.
That makes sense, by the way. Fellow salesperson.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
The reason that we started the Re-Engineered You, this is what happened. I have a problem with, this is what will happen. Let's say you're my friend, or you are my friend, and we are
friends.
You're having relationship problems, and you come to me. You're having a big breakup. You're going through it.
Yeah.
And you come to me for advice, and I act all, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. This happens to everybody. But then when it happens to me, I lose my friggin' mind. I have a meltdown.
Give me an example.
Anytime someone else is going through something, we kind of will push it off as, we want to be there, we want to support them.
Mm-hmm.
But we all have our processes to get through things, and that's what the show is about. The show started, Joe was my mentor at Toastmasters, and he was helping me on my public speaking thing. He's a professional writer, and he's a scientist. So
he is a scientist?
He is,
really?
He is. He's a research scientist.
Wait, not to cut you off here. How long have you been a Toastmaster anyway? I'm just curious.
7.5 years.
7.5 years?
Yeah,
okay.
Long time, yeah.
So he's a scientist. Go ahead.
So writer, scientist, and then I'm a salesperson, extrovert. He's a more introverted researcher. So we got together. We used to get together and write speeches, and we'd sit in a restaurant and we'd take our notes down. We noticed that people start listening in. So we thought, we're on to something here. This is interesting enough that strangers are eavesdropping on our conversation. So that's how the show started. And the premise of the show is there's a reason for the way you feel, and to be who you are. So it's not just self-help. Get over it. Things are great. Everything's roses. And I'll give you an example. One of our best listened to episodes is about Abraham Lincoln and about how severely depressed he was.
I love Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, he's everyone's favorite president, whether you're red or blue, right?
Yeah.
When as a young man at 6 years old, he had to build his mom's coffin with his dad.
Really?
His dad promptly moved away to find a new wife. He was raised by his 11-year-old sister. He had horrible depression. He used to study so hard, Charles, in college, that he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't bathe. His friends were worried that he was going to study himself to death.
Really?
And then as a man, he would go through these depressions of suicide. He'd be wandering through the woods with a gun. Neighbors would take him in for weeks and feed him and clothe him. So he had a lot of love and support. But the reason we talk about this is depression has its place. And that's an extreme case. But he did all these things even though he was this depressed. So depression gives us a chance to sit back, measure, and make our next move, just like Abraham Lincoln did.
Yeah, I like how you say that. And you know, so we talked about that I speak, and so I do EQ, emotional intelligence, and in that course, a 6-hour course, I talk about my experience with depression. I used to have extreme depression for many years.
Okay.
And I know that it's hard stuff, and so, but you learn a lot about yourself, and you definitely grow from those experiences, and you do have a story to tell. So that's interesting. That I didn't know he was still with depression at that level, and it's interesting to hear you share these ideas. So
another one too on this one, self-esteem. Rick Springfield. I don't know if you remember that old song. It's called Jesse's Girls.
Wait, I'm sorry to cut you off. Now, I've overcome depression, and in these classes, I like to just really help others get over it. Especially here in Oregon, we have depression is high with the rate of not having enough sun.
I was going to say, yeah, the weather.
Yeah. Not getting enough vitamin D.
Yeah.
Can definitely have an effect upon your emotions, your ability to stay happy and encouraged. Sure. So I really like helping others get over depression. It seems like you do that too with these podcasts.
Tried to. Another depression person in history, Rick Springfield, Jesse's Girl. It's a one-hit wonder from the 80s. I don't know if you remember this song.
What's it called, Jesse's Girl?
Jesse's Girl.
Yeah, I know, man.
It was a one-hit wonder.
I'm not that young, sir. We're not that far in age, sir.
But this is, at the time, he was a pop star. He had his own soap opera. He was a male model. So the man could sing, dance, good-looking, severely depressed, terribly low self-esteem. So then that's a story we shared about how he battled his demons, and that he got so depressed, he had to actually, he got so comfortable being depressed that he was more comfortable being miserable than happy.
Wow.
Even though he had all these things that said you're an amazing person. And
yeah.
So I'd like to let you know that it's not out here, it's in here, depression, and that he was over to battle his demons, didn't commit suicide, and came out winning and still performing and happy today. So.
Very interesting. You know, this is funny that we're talking about this. I was actually talking to a friend today, and she's going through a divorce, and we were actually talking about depression. I was sharing with her this program, one of these topics I speak on, which is New Start. I don't know if we've ever talked about New Start, and I've shared this on the show before. New Start is an acronym for nutrition. So New Start Nutrition, N for nutrition, E for exercise, W for water, S for sunlight, right? Because we're not getting enough here in Portland.
Yeah.
T for temperance. So you can't go to any extremes on anything.
Too high, too low.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then you have A for air. Need to get fresh air. Helps us with our quality of life.
Yeah.
Especially with COVID, all these viruses out there. Getting fresh air definitely helps. And then you have R for rest. Need to get your Z's in. And maybe you should take a vacation sometimes.
Change of scenery.
For sure. And then the last T is for trusting in something. And not to get overly religious. I mean, you believe in God. Even if you don't believe in God, believe in something is the idea. So that's New Start.
That's great. That's a great recipe. It sounds like it would work.
Yeah, I mean,
if you did all those things, it won't be a pot. And I think a lot of times the one that jumps out: eating well, exercising, water, sleep. Sleep is the one people forget about. They think, oh, I don't need sleep. I'll catch up on my sleep. But you do feel better when you're rested and your best self and
for sure
healthy.
For sure. And one thing I like to say, not because I want to hear more about your show. What I find that helps me a lot, or at least because I haven't had depression for, I would say 30 or 40 years now. I'm telling my age here, but I think the biggest thing that helps me out, and this is what I've written in some of my books and also what I share on almost every seminar, at least the ones that are on soft skills, is that you have to have a morning ritual. And you have to have a quality morning ritual, not just, because everyone has a ritual, right?
Right.
What's your ritual, by the way?
Go driving as fast as I can to get coffee, and you know what I mean, and just kind of, it's not a good structure to start the day.
No, that's a
reading my emails and panicking and late to everything. Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say that's a common ritual that people drink coffee and that everyone's in a rush. But what I think helps out, and I'm sure you have a quality ritual. Um, what I'm looking at is reading in the morning,
Okay. Yeah.
meditating, having time to think, plan things out. Exercise, I'm sure you exercise still.
Yeah.
I've seen you on social media doing all that. But again, having quality morning ritual where, again, you get to think, read, think, exercise, that really helps with depression.
One thing that helped me when I was going through some really tough times in my life, yoga. I started taking yoga, and the meditation part of that. I'd always been so herky-jerky, ADHD, spasmic, I guess you'd say it. When I started going to yoga and started focusing on breathing and just for an hour to shut the brain down, it really like restarting a computer. I felt so much better, and I made decisions so much better. I think when I get myself going too fast and not sleep and not eat well and drink too much alcohol, I just make bad decisions.
Yeah.
So taking yoga, it made me a lot fitter too.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. And I got tied into the community, people who are taking care of themselves. And health is number one on their priority list. It's good to have friends and be surrounded by a community like that.
Very nice. Yeah, it definitely helps with depression too. Having a good quality, positive people around you helps overcome depression. Another thing I left out is prayer. If you're religious, prayer helps out too with depression. But let's hear more about your show. I'm talking too much here.
Have you had some huge transformations with your classes? Have you had some people that you followed up with who followed up with you and thanked you? Or
Yeah, you made a good, that's a great question. I had a guy, I was presenting somewhere, I was in California near, Paradise? It was right after the fires. And this was a class on emotional intelligence. It was pretty fun. And this guy came with his mother, and they had issues like in the past where his childhood was not the best. And after the break, I was talking about New Start, the acronym, and he said, hey, I've heard that acronym before. Can you tell me more about it? And we talked, and this was on the lunch break, and I was able to kind of help him overcome his issues, and then we corresponded for a time, and it was interesting too because he was a lawyer. He was very accomplished, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying before. If you think about Lincoln and the other guy that you were referring to, very successful folks who have done much. At the same time, they're dealing with depression. Right. But yeah, to answer your question, I was able to help him out, and typically at the seminars, people stay after, and I'm able to counsel and,
nice,
and give some advice and all that good stuff. But let's hear more about your show. I'm talking too much here.
We are right now, we've done, our show's doing really well. What we do is we take science and history, we blend them together to dispel some self-help myths. So it's not just some guys talking about, IPA beer that they drink and stuff. We've got a narrative that we follow. We've practiced a lot on it. We've gotten coached along on it. I got a voice coach to help with keywords and how to voice act, which is not the same as talking. Everyone thinks everyone can talk or do speeches. I have a question for you. What do you think the biggest...
Hey, I'm an interview. You're interviewing me. Hey, hold on. I like how...
One more, and I'll be done. All
right, this last one. Then
what is the biggest misconceptions people have about the lifestyle of public speakers?
Oh, man, it's tough, man. I would say the biggest thing is that it's very competitive. I think that's the biggest thing. It's rare because, let's say if you're trying to get a gig and another speaker's trying to get the gig, they're going to pick the guy that has the background that's more catered to their needs.
Right.
I remember when I met, I don't know if you heard of Jeremy Anderson. He works at the ET. He's some other speakers who do really well, and I remember meeting Jeremy Anderson after a presentation. I was asking him all this question when I first started, and he was telling me how that you need to write books. Right. That's how I got into writing books. He said that usually if they're trying to decide between two speakers,
the author gets the nod, huh?
Yes, and not even that, but let's say if one of the speakers has one book opposed to the other person who has 7 or 8 books or 10 books, the one who has more books has a better chance of getting the gig.
Makes sense. These content monsters, right? That just get the content out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something. I answered your question. so we put it back on you, my friend.
Okay.
So I remember one of the first episodes I listened to was on, I think it was on IQ. That was a good one. And you had like the music
Yep.
soundtrack, and then you went into the idea about IQ and the guy that had the highest IQ. So let's talk about that. Do you recall that
Oh,
show?
I do. His name's William Sidis.
Uh-huh.
And William Sidis had an IQ that was 100 points higher than Albert Einstein.
Einstein was well, that's interesting because Einstein was 170. Sometimes they say 170, sometimes 180. So how much was his?
He was estimated around 250.
Einstein or this guy?
No, this guy. Einstein was at 170 to 185, and this guy was,
Okay.
250.
250, okay.
But the scary thing about this is, what do you think if you were
All right, you throwing it back on me.
brilliant
Yeah.
intelligence, how much more money do you think you would earn? If you were Einstein intelligent or William Sidis 100 points, just give me a number. How much more do you think you could earn?
Well, it depends. I think I recall his background. I just didn't know his exact name. I don't think he did really well financially, did he?
He didn't. This is how smart he was. He could read the Wall Street Journal at 2. He, at 5, could speak 14 different languages. He actually invented his own language, another Romance language, with vowels and consonants. He was in Harvard at 11.
Wow.
But he struggled through life socially. And so what I figured is if you were a genius like Elon Musk, you'd be a billionaire. If you knew more than everything and you saw hacks and shortcuts, it makes sense if you're brilliant, right? The truth being, a lot of people who are super intelligent, ultra intelligent, have problems socially. And they actually make only a little bit, a percentage more than the rest of us, even though they have all this. And a lot of them, William Sidis ended up being a tragic figure because he actually died of a brain aneurysm. So his big brain killed him. But through life, he was chased out of school. They had to pull him out of Harvard, even though he was top of his class, because the other kids were going to kill him.
Wow.
And so he never had a girlfriend. He just had a very unhappy, miserable life. And he ended up ghostwriting so many thousands of books that we don't even know.
Really?
That probably changed the world, but he didn't get credit for them. So it was very sad that someone with so much potential and so much intelligence, but the people who are the most successful
EQ.
are never They're never
Go ahead.
they're never the smartest. They're never the best. They're never the biggest, tallest, fastest. They're always the ones that work with people, have good soft skills. So if we can improve one thing to make yourself make more money and fit in better and have a happier life, it's working on your soft skills and how you treat people.
Very nice, very nice. Can I add to that?
Please.
Yeah, so in the EQ class, emotional intelligence, we say that the average person who has a higher emotional intelligence makes $30,000 more than their peers. So the quest is to have a high IQ and a high EQ. That usually equates to a lot of dollars.
Big bucks.
So if you think about Elon Musk, he has a high EQ, and I think he had to get there at some point. He probably had a high IQ, but he definitely had to work on his social skills, his soft skills to get where he's at. So.
And applaud those people who do see that, who are so smart and realize I'm lacking this area. Get some help. You can get better like that. And a lot of times, a lot of my friends are from Intel and Nike. A lot of them are engineers. And in that field, social skills go real far, real fast. Because you've worked with people who have got promoted, and you think, why them? Right? You think he was never the smartest, or she was never the best, smartest.
Right.
But that's usually because of what you said, the EQ.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So how do we stay in contact with you?
Listen to our podcast. Call us up. There's a contact thing on there. So send us an email if you like the show or don't like the show and what you think in the comments. And reach out to us. We love spirited debate, so we'd love to hear what you have to say and learn and grow from it. So thereengineeredyou.com.
Very nice. So thank you for coming to the show. We want to thank Todd for coming here, speaking his life, his story, his show. And we want to thank you for watching the show. Have an awesome, awesome day.